starting into Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is going to be dealing with things like perimeter, area, surface area, volume, things of that sort. Today we're going to start off with something called circumference and arc length. Now you're probably familiar with circumference, but let's just kind of touch on it real quick. The circumference is the distance around the outside of a circle. In other words, circumference is the perimeter of the circle. Now, we use this symbol pi as an irrational number defined as the ratio between the circumference and the diameter of the circle. So pi is equal to the circumference divided by the diameter. So if we were to solve this equation for circumference, we would multiply both sides by pi, and that would tell us that circumference is equal to pi times diameter, units. Or if we go a little further, we could break down diameter and say circumference is equal to 2 pi r. Remember that 2 and r is equal to diameter, right? So those two together multiplied equals diameter. So you could actually use either one of those formulas. If you're given diameter, it's just diameter times pi. If you're given radius, you multiply it by 2, then you multiply it by pi. All right, so how do we use this? Well, let's start off. The radius of a circle is 10. Find the circumference. So they're giving me the radius, and they're telling me it's 10. So my circumference is equal to 2 times pi times 10, which is equal to 20 pi. This is what we call the exact answer. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find an approximate. Typically what we do is we go an approximate to 2 decimal places. Okay, so approximate to 2 decimal places. And when we do this, what we're going to use is we're going to actually use 3.14 for pi. So literally we're just going to take our calculator, go 20 times 3.14, and that's going to give us an approximate of 62.8. There isn't a second decimal, so that would be my final answer. All right, let's try the second one. Now they're telling me that the circumference of a circle is 98 pi, and they want to know the diameter. So remember our formula, circumference is equal to pi times diameter. So if we plug in what we know 98 pi is equal to pi times diameter. So to solve that for diameter, we're going to simply divide both sides by pi. And you'll notice that the diameter then equals 98 units. Okay, let's try the third one here. The circumference of a circle is 26. Find the radius. So on this one, we're going to go back to our first formula. Circumference is equal to 2 times pi times radius. So what we're going to do is plug in what we know. We know circumference is 26. We know 2 pi times the radius. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by 2 pi. And that's going to get us a radius is equal to 13 divided by pi. Now, this would be what we call the exact measurement. So then we take that, and we now are going to just simply divide it. 13 divide 3.14, and that's going to give us a radius of 4.14 units. Okay? So there's our exact and our approximate answers. And that's how we find circumference. All right. Next one then is we're going to go into this thing called arc length. Arc length is kind of like circumference. It is the distance around part of the circle. Okay? And that part of the circle is determined by an arc. Okay? So when we look at this, what we're going to do is we're going to basically build a ratio of the arc that we're figuring over 360, the full circle. So it's going to build a ratio of the circumference. Okay, so arc length is a portion of the circle of the circumference. So if we look here on this first one, I have the arc length is equal to 90 degrees divided by 360 multiplied to 2 pi times 9. So then we could do some simplifying just to make our life easy. 90 goes into 360 4 times. 2 goes into 4 twice. So now what we end up with is that is now equal to 9 pi over 2. Okay, so this would be what we would deem as our exact. And then our approximate, literally we're going to go 9 times 3.14, divide that by 2, and we end up with 14.13. And that would be our approximate. Okay, let's try the second one here. So this time we have 300. So my arc length is equal to 300 out of 360 multiplied to 2 times pi times 16. So what we could do is start off simplifying some things. I always like to simplify as much as I can. I'm going to take the 0 away right away. 6 goes into 35 times. 6 goes into 36 6 times. I also have this 2 would make a 1. The 6 would make a 3. And then that's pretty much it. So now I'm just going to multiply 5 times 16, which is 80 pi over 3. So now we're going to take our calculator, go 80 times 3.14 divided by 3, and that's going to get us an approximate of 83.73 with the 3 repeating. So there is our exact and our approximate. Okay? So as we look on now, we're now going to start working a little bit in reverse here to find things like the angle or the radius. So what we're going to start off with is we're going to start off finding the radius. Okay, so when I look here, I have an arc length given, and that is 10.5. So the way I'm going to set this up is I'm going to go 10.5 is equal to 150 over 360 times 2 pi r. Okay, so now personally, I'm one, I like to simplify as much as I can to start with. So what I would do is come in here and say, okay, that's 15 over 36. I've got a 2 that goes into 36 18 times. I also could simplify the 15 to a 5, the 18 to a 6 by dividing those by 3. So now if you look, that math has become a lot easier. So now here's what I now have. I'm just going to rewrite it. So what I have now is I have 10.5 is equal to 5 pi r over 6. So now I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. And that's going to get us 10.5 times the 6 gives us 63. And that equals 5 pi r. Now to find the radius, I'm going to divide that by 5 pi. And 5 doesn't go into 63 evenly. So my exact answer is going to be just that. So r equals 63 divided by 5 pi. That's my exact. So now to find the approximate, I'm going to go 63 divided by 5 times 3.14. Now be careful typing that in. You want to make sure that the calculator recognizes that you're doing 5 times pi, then dividing, not divide first, then multiply. So my radius would be approximately 4.01, 63 over 5 pi. All right, let's take a look at the second one here. On the second one, we are given, find the measure of angle ABC. So here, we're going to start off, we know the arc length is 18.43, and that is going to equal the angle measurement divided by 360, multiplied times 2 times pi times 12. So now we're going to take And we're going to start simplifying. So the 2 goes into 360, 180 times. 180, so 180 divided by 12, that's going to simplify as well. So that's going to make a 1, that's going to make a 15. So now here's what I have. I have 18.43 equals pi times x over 15. So now my next step is I'm going to multiply by 15 to both sides. So that's going to give me 18.43 times 15. And that's going to give us 276.45. And that equals pi x. My last step is I'm going to divide that by pi. So my final answer, my exact answer is 276.45 over pi. And then we take that and we punch it in, 276.45 divided by 3.14. And we end up with an approximate of 88.04. And that is how we find arc length and circumference.